Hello, and welcome to this Jerusalem Press Club briefing. I'm Estia Ari, Press Director of the JPC. Last night, the Israeli cabinet voted to expand operations in Gaza in an effort to meet its goals of getting the hostages back, 59 of whom are still being held in Gaza, up to 24 of whom are still believed to be alive, and to defeat Hamas as a fighting and governing force. Tens of thousands of reservists are being called up, and the new strategy reportedly includes holding areas of the Strip for longer periods of time. To help us understand these developments, we are joined by Reserves Brigadier General Amir Avivi, founder and chairman of the Israel Defense and Security Forum. During his military career, Avivi served in a number of roles, including that of Deputy Commander of the Gaza Division. Thank you so much, General, for joining us today.
My pleasure.
So, I think in light of these developments, a lot of people are asking whether the decision of the cabinet last night represents some new phase or new goals of the war or a new approach. I want to understand how you understand the government decision and what it means for both the war goals and going forward.
So it's definitely not a new goal. The goals of war have been set at the beginning of the war, already on the 7th of October, and the goals are clear. Eradicating Hamas as a governmental and military entity, bringing back all the hostages, and setting the terms that never again there will be a terror army in Gaza. And in order to reach these goals, it was clear from day one that the only way to eradicate Hamas militarily and governmentally is to take over Gaza. It's to conquer the area and destroy physically Hamas. You cannot destroy them without being present on the ground because you have thousands and thousands of terrorists hiding inside tunnels and in areas that are populated, and you need to be there in order to deal with this. We have seen it throughout the war. But at the beginning of the war, Israel had to deal with multiple fronts. We had to keep the army ready and fresh enough to move them to the north, to Lebanon and Syria, and fight Hezbollah, not knowing how big this war will be. So Israel chose at the beginning a different way of operating, mostly based on raids intended to degrade Hamas dramatically, as we did throughout 10 months. At a certain point, we shifted the center of gravity to the north and did this amazing attack on Hezbollah, which also brought the collapse of the Syrian regime. And following that, Israel is basically dealt with a ceasefire. We released hostages several times. And now we are in a unique moment where we can really concentrate our forces in Gaza in order to deal with Hamas. We have the munitions. We have a new leadership in the army, very resolute, and they want a decisive win and also bring the hostages. And we have the US umbrella and backup to deal with Iran. So at this stage, the tactics have changed, and the IDF is conquering the area, taking over the area, not in raids, but really taking an area and staying there. And the big question was, do we launch now a full-scale attack on Gaza and maneuvering constantly until we defeat Hamas, or we do it gradually? And the decision was to do it gradually. Gradually doesn't mean it's not going to be a very strong attack. The IDF is recruiting tens of thousands of soldiers in order to attack seriously areas in Gaza, but it's still going to be done gradually in order to give a chance to reach a hostage deal, which will be according to the parameters that Israel can agree to, meaning not a very long hostage ceasefire, and also without giving up the goals of eradicating Hamas and making sure that there won't be a terror army in Gaza. And we understand that in order to reach this point, the level of pressure that we need to mount on Hamas is much, much bigger. So on one hand, we'll see the attack of the IDF enhancing dramatically. On the other hand, there will be a different way of giving humanitarian aid, a way that will prevent the aid from Hamas, and will be able to direct the aid to the Gazans themselves in areas that Hamas doesn't control. This way, they will be able to get the aid for free and not the way it's supposed to be, and not Hamas seizing the aid, taking most of the aid for themselves, and then selling the aid to the Gazans for a high amount of money, which obviously this is not what was intended. The only reason Hamas is still on his feet is the humanitarian aid. So this is something we need to solve. And this is something that the army planned, presented to the cabinet, and there is a solution how to bring the humanitarian aid without Hamas seizing it.
Okay, there's a lot there. And I think that, you touch on kind of a good overview of what's going on. But I think if we drill down a little bit on some of what you discussed, both in terms of, the fact that there's a new chief of staff in place and how much of an impact that is having on the change of direction, perhaps, in the way this war is being fought in Gaza. But also in terms of the humanitarian aid, there's of course a big issue of discussion. We know that during the break, I just heard the government spokesperson say 25,000 trucks of aid have gone into Gaza. That aid is still somewhat available. There's humanitarian zones, so-called, where that is happening. And I wonder if you can speak a little bit more to the impact of what does it mean that the army will now be involved with that, how to prevent Hamas from taking the aid and preventing it from getting it to those who need it. And then maybe we'll come to a little bit some of the other issues.
So the right way to do it, and we'll see exactly how the army will do it. I had personally discussions with Kogat about that, because we in IDSF, we wrote a plan how to distribute better the humanitarian aid. But the right way to do it is mobilize the Gazans to areas that are under control of the IDF, creating humanitarian zones in an area that the IDF is defending, but not managing directly the humanitarian zone, but let the international community and local Gazans manage the camp itself. And this way, we're able to bring humanitarian aid in a very safe way and distribute it in a fashionable manner and controlled manner, and not have Hamas seizing it and then making money and recruiting terrorists to fight Israel. Hamas in the last few weeks doesn't have the money to pay salaries to the terrorists. And if we continue this path of not giving Hamas humanitarian aid, but really directing it only to the Gazans, this will be a very big factor in our ability to really bring Hamas on its knees, whether it's for a deal to release hostages or in order to really discourage the terrorists and create a more effective attack by the IDF in the different areas that the IDF is going to operate now.
So I want to come back to the hostages. We mentioned there's 59 hostages still being held in Gaza, up to 24 believed to be alive. We've seen kind of no movement here, particularly no budging on Hamas' side for a long time already, on their willingness to talk about giving up hostages. Some are concerned that this military operation will put the hostages in even more danger than they already are in. Others, of course, say, this is the way to pressure them. I understand you're falling on the side of those that this operation is necessary to release the hostages. But what is your realistic assessment on our ability to get our hostages back?
So a hostage situation is always very complicated. At the beginning of the war, when we had 251 hostages, there were those who said, that's it, we cannot bring them. And yet, through military pressure, we brought back almost 200 hostages. So this is not theoretical, it's actually working. And we see that when we're not putting military pressure or international diplomatic pressure or the humanitarian pressure, then Hamas doesn't have the motivation to release them. As far as Hamas, they will stay there for years. I remind you that Gilad Shalit, without any military activities, was in the hands of Hamas 5.5 years. We're not intending to have our hostages 5.5 years in Hamas hands. We have to do the right things to release them. And the way to manage the risk is doing things gradually. There are those who say, let's launch now the full-scale attack, let's go all out, let's maneuver fast. This might endanger the hostages, but when you do it gradually, It's a bit safer. It has prices. It might, by the way, endanger more our soldiers. It's much better to maneuver fast. But really trying to balance the different goals of war, I think that the path that was chosen is balances between our need to secure the hostages and try to bring about a deal, and also the need to destroy Hamas. And at the end, we have to achieve all goals of war if we want to exist. You know, the chief of staff said, we don't just want to survive. We want to live and prosper. We're not going to live and prosper without destroying Hamas. We need to destroy Hamas, and we also have a responsibility to bring back the hostages.
So I want to talk a little bit about what that means, destroy Hamas, and the different approaches that are being discussed right now. You know, there's a new chief of staff, not so new anymore in our news cycle. He's already old, but a new chief of staff and the impact that that has on the military here. But also we're seeing kind of different discussions right now. I saw Amit Segal reported that Minister Smotrich is talking about occupying Gaza. The spokesperson for the government said that this is a widening of the operation and not an occupation. I don't know if there's an actual functional difference in terms of whether the military is going to stay and hold this material, these areas. So your thoughts on kind of what this means now, this expanded operation now and going forward?
I know very well the chief of staff, Eyal Zamir. We've been friends for 20 years. He's very resolute. He wants to win the war decisively. He understands what he needs to do, not only in Gaza, by the way, also in Iran. He understands that in order to really eradicate Hamas, we'll have to take over the whole Gaza Strip. Now, it's obvious that when you conquer an area and destroy the enemies, at least, even if it's for a week, a day, a month, you are in control. If you bring down an existing government, you have to do some basic management at the beginning. I don't think that the vision of Israel is managing the Gazan society. The visions can go two ways. One is bringing about Trump's plan to voluntarily relocate Gazans who want to live, and Israel is taking seriously this plan. And if there will be, on one hand, countries that want to receive Gazans, and on the other hand, Gazans that want to go, I believe that at the end of the phase where Hamas will be eradicated, we'll see part of this plan. The other issue is that Israel has no motivation to manage everyday life of Gazans. I think what we might see is some kind of cantonization, local management of clans in the different cities, all the municipalities in Gaza, in Judea and Samaria, in other places, even in Israeli Arab towns, are managed by clans. Kogat has a direct relationship with the different clans. At the beginning, it was dangerous and hard to mobilize them because they are afraid of Hamas, and Hamas even attacked some of the clans. So really, the idea of clans is relevant only when you eradicate Hamas. So you need to first win the war and eradicate Hamas. Then there will be local leadership that Israel will be able to work with. And this local leadership, we might see it already in the coming weeks when there will be humanitarian zones that will have to be managed locally, and it's not going to be Hamas management. So we might see this actually happening. But when Israel says that there is a clear goal of war that says there won't be again ever a terror army in Gaza, this means overriding security responsibility of Israel over the Gaza Strip, maybe something similar to what we see in Judea and Samaria, meaning when we see, for example, a terror activity in Jenin, we go in and we deal with this. So I believe that even after the war, if we'll see again some terror cells in Gaza, Khan Yunis, Rafah, whatever it is, Israel will act. It won't wait for them to build again rockets and missiles and drones or whatever they are doing. This is going to change. So I think that basically looking in the long term, there will be overriding security responsibility of Israel over Gaza and overall from the sea to the Jordan Valley, or as they like to say, from the river to the sea.
So that brings me to a couple of questions that are follow-ups to what you've been talking about. One is, does the IDF have the will to wage a total war against a guerrilla organization, from, I guess, the top of the IDF? And then the related question is about the reservists and fatigue of reservists. I personally just spoke to a reservist who's going in tomorrow for his 5th round. And he shared with me that he was struggling with the decision, and at the end, his conscience told him he had to go. But so these two double questions that are coming in, one on the kind of the IDF will, I guess, from the top, and also the reservists' fatigue as well.
I think that the motivation is much higher than what the media would like to portray. I don't understand, in the middle of a war, an existential war for Israel on 7 fronts, these campaigns of trying to discourage the society or the reservists. It's terrible. It's shameful. I think that overall the motivation is high, providing one thing, that they are sent to reach victory. People are willing to come, people are willing to risk their lives for a purpose. And the purpose is to win the war, bring back the hostages, and eradicate Hamas. For this, they are willing to come. But if they see the government telling them, go in, go out, stop, and it doesn't seem something coherent, then I think they will be discouraged.
I'm sorry, I've lost your sound. Is it just me?
I'm saying that if the reservists won't see a clear goal and it's not going to be really going and reaching the goals of war, this is discouraging. People want to feel that they're doing something meaningful. And I think that the motivation is there. I'm not saying they're struggling with the family, they're struggling with the businesses. There is a lot of challenges, but I think that one of the big changes is the leadership. When the fact that there is new leadership in the army, this brings a lot of spirit to the soldiers that feel that this is serious and we're going to get the job done.
Thank you. And then to the question, I guess, about the will in the IDF, the leadership, I guess you're saying that the will is there for what could be a long war against a guerrilla organization.
So I think the government understands that we have to start really moving towards finishing the war, but a finish that is a decisive win. And there is a limit to how much you can prolong it. And this is why we already see the government starting to put a timetable, talking about October, talking about a decisive win this year in Gaza and in Iran, and also peace agreements. So it seems like we're getting into some kind of timetable that will be dependent on the question of the hostages, if there will be another hostage deal or not. If there will be a hostage deal, obviously it will be extended, but we'll get the hostages. If not, then we'll see the army amassing more and more forces until Hamas will be destroyed.
You mentioned you're seeing a timetable, and in fact, Minister Dermer said that 12 months from now, the war will be over. And you were talking about a 7-front war. And so I guess the question is, how do we reach the end of the 7-front war? What's the end game for the 7-front war? Is there an end to this, or are we kind of doing this now for the foreseeable future?
The end depends on 2 things. One, winning decisively in Gaza and destroying Hamas, and the other one is attacking Iran. When these 2 things will happen, the war will be over. And Israel will win decisively this war. And the army and the government seem to me very resolute in reaching both goals, attacking Iran and destroying their nuclear sites and capabilities, and also winning in Gaza. We are hoping that the attack on Iran will be together with the US and not us alone. I think that we can see that these talks with Iran are not going anywhere. They're not going to dismantle their nuclear plans. They're not going to do what President Trump is asking them to do. And I'm hoping that soon the president will realize that what we have been saying from day one is the reality, and we need to deal militarily with the Iranian regime.
I know we're short on time, and so I want to be cognizant of our time here and wrap up with just a couple of last questions related to what you've said now. Of course, one is the fact, if we're now going to be focusing the energies of the army in Gaza, we've seen a lot going on over the weekend, with the Houthi strike, of course, with what's going on in Syria with the Druze. Will the army be able to do all of these different things that are on its agenda? And if I understood you correctly just now as well, an actual strike on Iran at the same time. This seems to be, is this now, you're saying, part of the war goals in general, that we must strike Iran perhaps while they're at this weak point? Or is this something that is unconnected to the kind of kinetic war going on here?
Israel hasn't set a goal of war about Iran, but still there is an understanding that this war is not going to end without us destroying their nuclear capabilities. We have one shot. It's a very unique moment in history where they lost all their proxies. They lost their air defense. We have really a strong alliance with the US and an understanding that we need to deal with this. And Israel, I believe, is going to seize the moment and is going to deal with this imminent threat. We're not going to live under a nuclear threat. And so on one hand, the ground forces are mostly focused on Gaza. On the other hand, there is a huge buildup of capabilities and readiness in the Air Force, in the intelligence, working closely with the Central Command of the US, preparing for a scenario of an attack on Iran.
Thank you, General Avivi. I think there's a lot to think about here, and a lot of what you've discussed here. One more question has just come in, actually, as I was about to thank you, and that is the question of whether Hamas will have any motivation to give up the hostages going forward. What would it likely induce them to do so?
I think that Hamas, when they don't give the hostages, is then when they feel that the Israeli society is divided, that they were not resolute enough, when they hear voices saying we need to end the war. This is exactly what they want. When they will realize that they are on their way to complete destruction, then they'll get motivated. So it's really the military pressure and the fact that we're going to detach Hamas from its own Gazan society. This kind of pressure can bring Hamas on its knees and asking for a ceasefire. So I'm hoping to see in the coming weeks something happening and them willing to reach a deal.
Okay, well, definitely have to keep our eyes peeled what's going on in the days and weeks ahead. Never a dull moment here. And so I want to thank you once again, General Avivi, for joining us on what I know is a very busy day for you and for all of our colleagues in the news media. And I would, of course, like to thank my colleague, Jonathan Beck, for facilitating this webinar. This will be posted on our YouTube channel later today. And as always, looking forward to better news. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.